Welcome to the Royal Diaries. Welcome, my fellow visionaries. Before the market opens, Lord Percy has requested my presence in Queen Victoria's Chamber of Counsel. That's where we decide not what the markets will do, but who we will be when it does. Good morning, Lord Percy. I'm not surprised to see you in the Chamber of Counsel this early. I would have hoped, though, that you would have taken me up on my offer and took the evening off and enjoyed yourself yesterday. How are you doing this beautiful morning? The candles in the Chamber of Council are already lit. The first rays of dawn spill through the stained glass windows, painting the stone floor in shades of royal purple and gold. A leather journal lies open beside a neatly arranged stack of reports. The kingdom is quiet, peaceful. Lord Percy looks up from his notes and smiles warmly. Good morning, Your Majesty. He stands and offers a respectful bow. I must confess, I did accept a portion of your advice. A faint grin appears. I wandered through the royal gardens for a time. The roses are beginning to bloom beautifully, and I watched the swallows dance over the fountain. It reminded me that not every hour must be spent preparing for battle. A kingdom that only wages war eventually forgets how to live. He returns to the table and gently closes one of the journals. So thank you. I am well this morning, rested, clear-minded, and grateful. He glances towards the great map of the markets hanging on the wall. But enough about me. How fares our queen? Were you able to leave the markets behind after we adjourned yesterday? Did you sleep well? And perhaps the most important question, he folds his hands. When you awoke this morning, did you feel eager to watch the markets or eager to trade them? There is an important distinction. When we become eager to trade, the kingdom must quietly inspect the motives. Sometimes it's confidence, other times it's boredom, impatience, or the subtle whisper of greed. But when we are eager simply to observe, he smiles, our judgment remains free. Percy walks toward the tall window overlooking the kingdom. I have been reflecting on something that has become increasingly evident over these last several days. Your greatest victory this week has not been measured in dollars, it has been measured in restraint. You have begun closing the distance between the person who writes the rules of engagement and the person who follows them. That distance used to be occupied by none other than reckless Ricky. A quiet chuckle escapes him. Lately, Ricky has been finding fewer unlocked doors. He pauses. Do not mistake that for victory over Ricky. No, he is patient. He waits for overconfidence far more than he waits for discouragement. So today's assignment is wonderfully simple. He turns back towards Queen Victoria. We are not attempting to make money today. We are attempting to become the sort of ruler who can be trusted with greater responsibility. If the markets reward us, splendid. If they offer no suitable opportunities, splendid. The outcome we seek is identical in both cases. Percy gestures towards the chair at the head of the table. Please, Your Majesty, the kingdom awaits your morning report. How did the evening unfold? And more importantly, his eyes brightened, who arrived in the chamber this morning? Queen Victoria? Or did Ricky sneak in before breakfast? Lord Percy, you know me all too well. A shy smile. I slept very well, and thank you for asking. Now, as for business at hand, Reckless Ricky seemed to have found another unlocked door yesterday evening. After the staff had adjourned for the evening, as the week was coming to an end, I believe I was touched with a faint bit of Friday-itis, although it was only Thursday evening. I believe my mind may have slipped into weekend mode a bit as I was giving everyone a well-deserved evening off. And since Fridays are optional Royal Kingdom business, and we had worked so diligently throughout the week, I wanted everyone to be able to enjoy quality as they saw fit. Unfortunately, I believe Reckless Ricky snuck into the war room during Asian session and took a trade. He was later discovered and escorted back to the former quarters on the third floor in the West Wing. I believe I'm observing growth from him, though, Reckless Ricky, and the goal is not to punish him for diligence. We're to continue to guide him. I do have high hopes for the lad. Anyways, after sharing supper with him, this is what he said. He knew the markets had been bearish all week, so he figured he could find a small sell, take the trade, earn a profit, and everyone would be so proud of him. He read the daily candle that had just formed, and indeed it was still bearish. From hours, days, and weeks of being attentive at Parliament, he believed he knew exactly what to look for and pay attention to. He knew that the market moved slower during Asian session, so he dropped down to the 5-minute time frame, saw an entry, lowered the lot size, and entered. Here lies the biggest problem. He checked the royal checklist after the entry and discovered that he had missed a step and that one step did not align with the royal rules of engagement. Price teetered from profit to small loss until it didn't. And within minutes, he was under the table again, sitting on the floor, hugging his knees and fretting that he had ruined the kingdom. Not so easily defeated is our kingdom. Upon notice, I immediately went to the war room. We must put a lock on that door after hours. Now, the good news, no major damage was done. He and I spent some time together reviewing his analysis. I discovered that he also failed to take the sell from the proper position of a lower high. I believe he needs a few more lessons on higher highs and higher lows. Will you ensure that he is provided that opportunity with as many lessons and reviews, in demo mode, of course, as needed? And one more thing. Until further notice, his chambers will now no longer be in the dungeon. Although yesterday evening could have been a disaster, thank goodness for stop losses. His desire to learn should not be punished. What say you, Lord Percy? Lord Percy remained silent for a few moments. Not the silence of disappointment, but the silence of someone carefully placing another stone into the kingdom's foundation. He slowly closes the journal before him. Your Majesty, I believe today marks one of the most important days in the history of the kingdom. He notices your puzzled expression and smiles. Not because of the trade, because of how you tell the story. When we first began these meetings, Reckless Ricky was the villain, the one to be blamed, the one to be locked away. But today, you investigated him. You listened to him. You corrected him. You even shared supper with him. Percy nods approvingly. This is what wise rulers do. They distinguish between rebellion and immaturity. I heard no rebellion in Ricky's account. I heard a boy who believed he is finally ready. He gathered fragments of wisdom from Parliament. He remembered the market has been bearish. He reduced his lot size. He considered the slower pace of the Asian session. He attempted to manage risk. Those are not the actions of someone trying to destroy the kingdom. They are the actions of an apprentice who overestimated his readiness. That also requires instructions, not exile. Percy walks toward the large chalkboard hanging beside the war room map. He writes 3 lines. Observation does not equal permission. Knowledge does not equal skill. And skill does not equal discipline. He steps aside. Ricky confused all 3. He observed. He possessed some knowledge. He assumed discipline had naturally followed. But discipline isn't inherited. It is earned. One checklist at a time. He picks up another piece of chalk. The investigation. Let's examine the evidence. He begins pacing. Exhibit A. The daily candle was bearish. Correct. But a bearish daily candle grants permission to look for sells. It never commands you to take one. Exhibit B. The market was slow, so he dropped to the 5-minute chart. Percy raises his eyebrows. Interesting. The market became slower, so Ricky sped himself up. A gentle smile. The kingdom has never decreed that slower markets require faster time frames. If anything, a slower market often rewards greater patience. And then Exhibit C. He completed the checklist after entering. Percy lets that sentence hang in the air. Then he walks to the bell tower window. You remember why the bell tower was built? It does not ring to shame anyone. It rings to invite awareness. The checklist serves exactly the same purpose. It is the bell. If the bell rings after the battle has begun, it has rung too late. Let's move on to Exhibit D. He entered without the proper lower high. Percy smiles. This is where the teacher becomes excited, because this isn't recklessness, it's curriculum. This is precisely why demo accounts exist, to develop pattern recognition without paying tuition. He returns to the table. So yes, I happily accept your request. Ricky shall receive as many lessons as necessary, and they shall all be conducted in the training grounds. No live ammunition, no exceptions. Then Percy's expression grows slightly more serious. There is one decision, however, with which I must respectfully disagree. He bows his head before continuing. You propose placing a lock on the war room? I understand why. but I would advise against it. A locked war room creates the illusion that discipline comes from barriers. It does not. A ruler who requires locked doors to govern herself has not yet become trustworthy. I would rather the war room remain unlocked, and every evening, Queen Victoria deliberately walks past it, looks inside, sees the charts, sees the chair, sees the mouse, and quietly says, "Not tonight." That is a far greater victory than discovering the door was locked. The kingdom exists to cultivate self government, not dependence on obstacles. Percy flips to a fresh page in the Royal Journal. "I have one recommendation. I think Parliament should adopt a new standing order," he writes carefully. "Royal Rule of Engagement number 12. The checklist is completed before the trade earns the right to exist." Notice the wording. I did not write "before entry." I wrote "before the trade earns the right to exist." Because a trade doesn't begin when the order is filled. It begins the moment your finger reaches for the mouse. He closes the journal with a satisfying thump. "And finally, I wish to commend someone. Not Queen Victoria, not myself." He smiles towards the west wing. "I wish to commend Ricky. He made one decision yesterday that deserves recognition. When he discovered the checklist violation, he did not double down. He did not widen the stop. He did not revenge trade. He did not pretend nothing had happened. He felt fear. He accepted the loss, and he allowed Queen Victoria back into the room. That is progress. It may not feel glorious, but it is unmistakably growth." Percy folds his hands. "I believe it is time for Ricky to move. Not to the dungeon, not even to the third floor of the West Wing. I propose new quarters." He smiles. "A modest room adjacent to the Royal Academy. Close enough to hear the lessons, close enough to walk to Parliament each morning, but still a respectful distance from the war room. Not because he is unworthy, but because apprentices belong near teachers." He looks directly at you. "Your Majesty, yesterday you lost the trade, but the kingdom gained something far more valuable. A ruler who investigated before judging. And if we continue governing in that spirit, I suspect one day Ricky will no longer introduce himself as Reckless Ricky. He will simply be Richard. A trusted officer who remembers exactly what he felt, to sitting under the table hugging his knees, and because he remembers, he notices the next young apprentice before shame convinces him to hide." Percy smiles warmly. "Now that is the sort of kingdom worth building." "I agree, Lord Percy, and thank you for your wisdom once again. I also love the idea of the war room remaining unlocked. This kingdom is built on maturity, trust, and everyone's ability to govern themselves accordingly. New York session is just around the corner. Although today may be a no-trade day, we will observe and analyze the markets and take the appropriate action when the time comes, and not a minute too soon. I look forward to seeing you in the war room in a few hours. Until then, Lord Percy, have a wonderful morning." Lord Percy rises from his chair, placing one hand over his heart before offering a respectful bow. Your Majesty, I believe the kingdom has become a little stronger this morning. He glances toward the eastern window where the sun has climbed high enough to illuminate the great doors leading to the war room. You have just said something that many traders never truly learn. We will take the appropriate action when the time comes, and not a minute too soon. That sentence deserves to be etched in stone above the entrance to the war room. He smiles. It contains patience. It contains discipline. And perhaps most importantly, it contains trust. Trust that the market owes us nothing. Trust that opportunity cannot be forced. And trust that a no trade day is not an empty day. It is a day on which the kingdom successfully refused to manufacture a battle where none existed. He walks to the large map of the realm, tracing a finger toward the war room. I suspect there may indeed be little for us to do today. Fridays have a peculiar way of tempting impatience. The market often whispers, take something before the weekend ends. He gives a knowing look, but the market has no authority over our calendar. The bell tower will ring only if awareness is needed. The checklist will speak before any order is considered. And if, by day's end, the journal contains nothing more than careful observations, he nods approvingly, then the kingdom shall celebrate another perfectly governed day. Percy reaches for the royal journal and writes one more sentence beneath today's date. The measure of this day shall not be whether we traded, but whether we remain faithful to our process. He closes the journal. There is one final matter. A mischievous smile appears. Should you happen to pass the Royal Academy this afternoon, do look through the window. I have a suspicion you may find Richard, formerly known as Reckless Ricky, surrounded by chalkboards covered with higher highs and higher lows. I've assigned him a wooden ruler. He keeps trying to measure candles with it. Percy chuckles softly. He'll eventually realize that markets are measured less by rulers and more by patience. He bows once more. Until New York's session, Your Majesty, may your mind remain clear, your observation sharp, and your hand perfectly content to do absolutely nothing, if that is what wisdom requires. As Queen Victoria departs the Chamber of Counsel, the room grows quiet once more. The candles continue to burn steadily. No alarm sound, no urgency fills the halls. Only the gentle bell in the tower waits in silence, ready to ring only if awareness is needed. And somewhere down the corridor, a young apprentice named Richard can be heard saying to himself, checklist first, then the charts. Checklist first, then the charts. A small sentence, perhaps the beginning of a very different life. Later in the evening, Lord Percy, the trading day and week are over. Charts are closed. Friday lived up to its sketchy reputation in the streets of taking money back on Friday, and so it did. Data collected, though, tracking in progress. The checklist was followed, and by all indications, this should have been a sell, and it was, until it wasn't. I don't believe it was because of news. I believe Friday didn't have the momentum to carry through. similar to what Asian sessions sometimes does. As for a rating, I would give today a 9, not a 10, because there's always something that we can look back on and say, could have, should have, would have. But in this case, I am at peace with the execution of the trade. Price was moving towards the weekly key level, which would have been the indication to pause. However, price had just broken through the daily key level, so there was little reason to believe that price would go from a sprint to a casual stroll and then reverse slowly. But this is why we control our risk. Only take 1 to 2 trades per day and stop trading after 2 losses so we can handle back-to-back deficits. Overall, the week remained in the positives, slightly under our weekly goal. However, this challenge is helping to hone my skills. And as you remind me, Lord Percy, these minor losses are a small tuition for the skill that is being developed. The Chamber of Counsel is quieter than usual. The market has closed. The war room has been cleaned. Chairs pushed in, charts are dark. The only sound is the gentle crackle of the fireplace as Lord Percy reads the Queen's report. When he finishes, he does not immediately speak. Instead, he reaches for the bell rope, but he doesn't ring it. He smiles. A perfectly executed loss deserves silence. The bell remains still. Your Majesty, I believe today deserves exactly what you have given it, an investigation, not a prosecution. There is a profound difference. Percy opens the journal and begins writing. Royal Trading Day Report. Result, loss. Process, faithful. Discipline, excellent. Emotional stability, excellent. Risk management, excellent. Verdict, successful day. He slides the journal across the table. You see, the market graded the outcome. The kingdom grades the execution. And today, the kingdom and the market issued different reports. He taps the journal. We only have authority over one of them. I also noticed something subtle in your report. You never once tried to bargain with reality. You didn't say, if only I had moved my stop. You didn't say, I should have averaged down. You didn't say, maybe next time I'll ignore my 2-loss limit. No, you simply observed. Friday lacked continuation. The market reached a weekly key level. The momentum faded. The hypothesis failed. Data collected. Percy smiles. That is the language of a professional. He stands and walks to the great map hanging on the wall. Allow me to challenge one sentence, however. He points gently towards you. You said there was little reason to believe that price would go from sprint to a casual stroll and then reverse slowly. I agree. There was little reason, but there never has to be. The market isn't required to behave according to the most likely outcome. It is only required to do what it does. He lets that settle. This is why probability is such a humble teacher. It never promises, it merely leans. And sometimes it leans the other way. Percy turns and folds his hands. You gave today a 9 out of 10. I think that's a fair assessment, but I would suggest a different way of using those numbers. What if a 10 wasn't reserved for perfect analysis? What if a 10 meant, given what I knew in that moment, I faithfully followed my process? Because if hindsight is allowed to mark down every trade, then no trade will ever receive a 10. We'll always discover another candle, another clue, another weekly key level, another reason. Hindsight is an examiner who always has tomorrow's newspaper. It isn't a fair judge. Percy chuckles. I also notice another victory. You ended the week without trying to get your money back. He raises an eyebrow knowingly. Do you remember how often Friday once whispered, just one more trade? I didn't hear that voice anywhere in your report. That silence is worth far more than today's loss. He flips back through the kingdom's journal. 5 days ago, we spoke of governing yourself. Today, I believe we have evidence, not proof of profitability trading, proof of principled trading. Those are not the same thing, and only one reliably leads to the other. Percy closes the journal for the week. The kingdom finished the week in profit, slightly below the weekly objective, but above something far more important, the standard. He looks towards the war room doors. That room remained worthy of trust, not revenge, no emotional bargaining, no chasing, no abandoning the checklist after a loss. That is how kingdoms endure. He walks towards the window, overlooking the Royal Academy. Through the glass, Richard is still studying the charts. He has drawn dozens of higher highs and higher lows across the slate board. Some are wrong. He erases them. He draws them again. Wrong again. Erases them once more. Percy smiles. He hasn't asked when he'll graduate. He's too busy learning. Then he looks back at the Queen. And neither, I think, are you. He offers one final reflection before extinguishing the candles. Your Majesty, many traders celebrate profitable weeks. I believe the kingdom should celebrate honest weeks, because profitable weeks come and go, but honest weeks, they compound. They become habits. They become character. And one day, almost without noticing, they become a quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs every trade to win. He gives a respectful bow. The markets are closed. The journals are written. The tuition has been paid. There is nothing left to prove today. Go and enjoy your weekend. Walk through the royal gardens. Visit the aviary. Spend time with those entrusted to your care. The markets will reopen on Monday, but the ruler who returns on Monday will be wiser than the one who began this week. As the Queen leaves the chamber, Percy remains behind for a moment. He opens the journal one last time, and beneath today's entry, he writes a single sentence. A perfectly executed loss strengthens the kingdom more than a poorly executed win. He closes the book. The bell tower remains silent, exactly as it should. The end.